Hey everyone, it's Cory from the Bradshaw Boys, and before we get started with the episode, we wanted to tell you about a few things. We are currently rewatching Sex and the City and putting out 2 episodes every week. One is going here on our main feed, and the other episode is on our Patreon feed. We want to get a massive rewatch going with all of you to get ready for the Sex and the City reboot, and just like that. So please join us by rewatching all of Sex and the City by listening here and then catching all the episodes on our Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/Bradshaw Boys, it's just $5 a month. You get twice as many episodes as you do on the main feed, and you join us for the entire rewatch. I mean, what a crazy deal, right? It's super fun. We'll get all the episodes in before the reboot happens, and you get to catch everything and be there with us. The other thing is, if you follow us on our Instagram at the Bradshaw Boys, we just launched a face filter in stories called Who is Your Sex and the City Boyfriend? It'll tell you who your boyfriend is. You just point it at your face. It spins through a bunch of guys, and then look, your boyfriend is Steve. If you go to our Instagram, you can check it out on our profile, go to the filters, or look for it in the filter store, tag us, and then we'll repost you so the world can know who your boyfriend is. All right, enjoy the episode, everyone.
You're now listening to The Bradshaw Boys, a podcast where 3 relatively grown men binge the iconic HBO series Sex and the City. So dust off those DVDs and grab yourself a white wine or even a Cosmopolitan and settle in. Take it away, boys.
Welcome to the Bradshaw Boys, a podcast where 3 guys watch their way through Sex and the City with you. Rewatch their way through Sex and the City with you. And just like that, I'm Cory Cavin.
I'm Kevin James Doyle.
My name is Jon Sieber.
Today, we're rewatching and we're also re-guesting with one of our favorite guests ever. The best guest ever. Please welcome Chinae Alexander.
What up, what up?
Welcome back.
Yes.
Thank you.
You were
I
literally
feel honored.
You were our 6th episode ever. I think
First guest
you're
ever.
our first guest ever. You were our
was the
first guest ever.
When we were out thinking about doing the podcast, we're like, who are a few people we could have? You were the first person that came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That
Yeah.
made me that makes me so proud. I felt honored to be the first guest, and now I feel honored to be re-guested.
Also, the crazy thing is it was in this very room.
Yes.
That is
And
nuts.
this is the first time we have been back in the studio in a year and a half all together.
I feel like we're weirdly breaking virginities in this room over and over,
Yeah,
and I
totally.
feel really great about it.
Yeah.
Me too. Me
It hurts
too.
a little bit, but it also feels good.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt. Chinae, I think when we were first coming up with the idea, we thought about all of the different women friends that we have that have like cool jobs and do cool things, and we're like, this is going to be so easy. And now we've met so many people, and now we're rewatching it. Do you remember? So what episode did we watch last time? Season 1.
I looked it up.
We did.
It was
We did
episode 6.
the bus episode where Carrie gets her
yes.
bus. I mean, I didn't even have to look that up.
Yeah.
I remember it.
That's
you didn't.
awesome.
It was secret sex. It was
Yeah.
the
Secret
bus, but
sex.
it was also Mike Singer and the Cheese Shop Lady.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which she was amazing.
And we
Yeah.
had her on our live show.
Yeah.
That you were
Yeah,
also
yes,
on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Look at all
Third
this
time.
on.
I mean, you guys are.
No
Not
way.
at all.
Never.
No, we're very
No,
happy.
it's one of the best things. It's difficult sometimes when we have a guest and it's like stunts the conversation
Mhm.
in a way that you're like, oh yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
And then there are some people that we don't know that it's just like sparks and magic. But I think the response from our episodes of guests of people that we're friends with,
Yeah.
Yeah.
people are like, that episode was amazing. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, we kind of do this with the mics off with these people. So
Yeah.
that's why it's like,
Got the chemistry.
we
We
got
do.
the chems.
I also really had a joke I wanted to use when you said that about the illusionist duo we had on named Sparks and Magic.
Sparks and Magic.
Sparks and Magic. They were from Las Vegas. They were the opening act for Siegfried and Roy. They were amazing. All right, sorry, that joke's dead. No, keep going.
What kind of outfits do you think Sparks and Magic wear?
I had sparkles, tons of sequins.
Unitards.
Yeah. Also, one of them it was a unitard. It was sequins and it was all flames. That was Sparks.
And they could do that. It'd be like, the sex is like magic, but then you see these outfits. What if Samantha
outfits
breaks
cause
up
the
with a guy when
sparks.
she sees his job? She's like, oh, I can't date a musician. Or not a magician. A magician.
But I make music with my card tricks.
Yeah.
I could totally see Sparks and Magic being in Sex and the City from the famed magician duo Sparks and Magic.
Yeah.
Who would fuck Sparks and Magic?
Samantha,
Yeah.
both at the
For
same time.
sure.
She'd be like, I bet I can show you how to make that ding dong disappear.
You're gonna
You might pull a rabbit out of your hat. Wait, what? Sorry.
And when he finishes, he's like, oh, and she's like, ta-da.
He pulled a rabbit out of his hat, so I pulled a pussy out of my pants.
I got to read Samantha for you guys, and I've never felt more honored.
I know.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
so good.
Uh-huh.
It was
So,
great.
Do you still consider yourself a Samantha?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, I think I'm like reforming into a Miranda.
Really?
Interesting.
Yeah. And
I can see
as
that.
you watch back, like I've watched back during COVID, some
Mhm.
Sex and the City episodes. When you watch back, you're like, Miranda's kind of the best.
Mm.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
she's like, I mean, Samantha's great.
Yeah.
For like, she's like, I mean, you can't beat a one-liner from Samantha.
Right.
But Miranda's actually like the most stable.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, she is she buys an apartment earliest of all of them.
Mhm.
She has a kid the first
Mhm.
of all. She
Yep.
does go she
She makes
makes
partner.
partner. She does hit she hits a lot of big life decisions.
Mhm.
All
Yeah.
of them are hitting big
She
life
eats,
decisions.
she eats trash out, or food out of the trash
She eats
first.
garbage cake, yeah.
Which, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, she orders delivery like a New Yorker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's the most reasonable out of all
Mhm.
me.
That's
like,
true.
I mean, no one wants to be a Carrie.
mhm.
Ugh. Sorry, I don't like Carrie.
no, I mean,
I'm pro Carrie this.
John
rewatch.
was very
I was
Really?
I was very
anti-Carrie.
hard on Carrie the first time through, and got a lot of messages about it. So I'm going to be very pro. I'm going to choose to be pro Carrie
Okay,
this time through.
you're
Yeah.
you're choosing to try to understand her as a character rather than cast a little
Yeah,
more
which is a
judgment.
very anti-Carrie thing for me to do, to
Yeah.
try to understand another person.
Yeah,
But
but we're all like, we don't fuck with Charlotte, right?
Oh, I do.
No, Kevin is
Oh,
a
yeah.
giant Charlotte fan.
I forgot you're like in love with Charlotte.
oh
yeah.
yeah.
Ugh.
Kristen,
Well-
whenever Kristen Davis messages our Instagram, I'm just like, I wonder what our life could be like.
the thing that we had said with Charlotte that I feel like we learned is that Charlotte had this kind of princess version of life where it's like, I want to get married to the perfect guy. I want to have
Mhm.
the perfect house. I want to live in a castle. And she did achieve what she thought was that. And then it all fell apart.
Right.
And she was sort of forced to go on this journey again.
Right.
And then with a guy that she didn't think she would have married, and then she adopted. So we do say that one thing about Charlotte is that she does kind of have this hero's journey.
I know. I
of
was just thinking that. I was
it's totally
I was
Joseph
like,
Campbell hero's
I was
journey.
like,
Where it's
how-
like
hero's
you
journey,
get
how
what
would
you
you-
want, it falls apart, and you have to rebuild. And she's still very Charlotte about certain things, like in like the what you imagine Charlotte to be. But I do feel like she goes through more than just like the archetype of Charlotte, like what you would think.
yeah.
She is a little more of a complete character.
I also mix up, just like you do with TV. Like if you meet certain characters, be like, I'm not this person. You know, Jennifer Aniston is not Rachel. She's an
Right,
and
right,
so
right.
with that, like I look at Kristen Davis. She's just the person I'm most attracted to.
Are you bringing up the DMs again?
And this is not a humble brag. This is a brag. She DMs us sometimes. No, there's something about her type. But it's funny that there was somebody that was on that was like, one of our guests was just like, yeah, you guys wouldn't be a good match. And I was like, oh, thanks.
Oh, it was Lindsay Metzler from We Met at Acme, and we were talking about. She was like, "Who would you guys want to end up with?" And Kevin and I both said Charlotte, and then she was just like, I
was like, do you think we'd be a good fit for Charlotte? And
she just goes, "No, you guys would both disappoint Charlotte very much."
I think John would.
She was like, I think John would be a good match for Charlotte.
I will
funny.
say, I think you do have, Chinae, a similarity to Samantha that we didn't really know the first time watching it that I want to talk about now.
Ooh.
And that is what I think is the most honorable trait in Samantha, and that is how loyal she is. She is like so
She is.
like tenaciously loyal and defensive of her friends
Yes.
with no judgment whatsoever.
Mhm.
And like that is like like if you take away some of the superficial things about Samantha, that is a trait. I've known Chinae for 15 years now. And like, that is something that you have in spades. Like, you are the most loyal person. You are someone that your friends can come to. There will never be any judgment. And so like that was a really great thing about Samantha that we got to see and learn, because so many people do think of her just as like the one-liners or the one who has
she is the
bunch of
friend
sex
that you want.
Yes.
Because number one, she will slash your boyfriend's tires if he cheats on you.
Yeah.
But also she's always going to tell you the truth, which to me, in a friend, I love a truth teller. I'm often the truth teller that people come to and are like, no bullshit, just tell me what. I love that she can kind of like cross any group and just like hang. Love that about her. But also I feel like she was actually the most progressive character from the beginning. You know, she was kind of unapologetically herself, and you're actually seeing that be more of like how women feel about themselves now, but she was doing it and it was kind of like tongue in cheek at the time. And now it's like, no, that should be the standard.
Yeah. Also the whole sexual element to her is obviously what gets played up. But when you see her, it doesn't stem from a fact that's like, oh, I'm so horny all the time. It stems from her being like, I know what I want.
Yeah.
I'm
She's like, I'm liberated as hell.
And she's like, and I think that's just not what we expected when you just hear, before you see the whole show, you know the one-liners, you know the stuff, and then you watch it and you're like, oh yeah, like if you need somebody to call, like, that's who you call.
But you always, as people, you always want the friend who you know will equally bring the most fun, but will also be there when you're at your least fun moment. And the balance of that person of like being able to elevate a situation, but then also like meet you where you are is like, I mean, that's what we all want.
Here's a question. You're like, basically this show's 20 years old, more than 20 years old now. And you're live in New York. You're like I don't know, you're in Instagram personality. You've talked to people about sex and dating and all this stuff. So it's like television is not necessarily where the conversation happens culturally anymore. What is it like kind of being a forward facing New Yorker? I mean, you're kind of like, if they were rewriting it, your life could be one of the girls that it's like, this person's started their Instagram. Now they do this, now they do this. And that's your life. I guess, what is that like being that now, and with your podcast, Press Send podcast, go listen. We were just on that. And then talking to, basically it's like, what's the landscape like around New York and amongst the conversation now? And what's it like being part of that? It's like a grand question.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm like reevaluating my whole life with that question.
Good job.
Fuck. I gotta go cry in the corner. What is it like? No, you know what is awesome is I feel like we're still asking the same questions, but we have a lot more like data and progress and confidence when we ask them. And so that's what I find whenever I kind of rewatch Sex and the City is I'm like, man, we have come so far. Our base level questions are still the same. Like, can we be loved? Can we find connection? Are we enough? You know, how do we like meet like people, and not just, you know, significant others, but how do we meet friends, coworkers, whatever, where they are? And I think that those age-old questions never kind of die, but the way that we meet them does. And so it's been really interesting, actually, like having, you know, my life kind of revolves around giving people advice, and as particularly around relationships and love and sex and all of that. But it's coming from a place of a little bit more like gutsiness and a little bit more confidence and a little bit more ownership in how people want their lives to run. And I mean, I remember watching the show for the first time when it was on, and the difference of like how women see themselves is miraculous. I mean, the questions that we ask now might be rooted in the same like thoughts, but they're coming from a totally different perspective. And I love that. And I also think what is really interesting is that men around me are asking those same questions, and they feel more able to ask them. So I think, yes, there's been like a progression with women, but there's also been a progression with men. And that's really interesting to see is like, are those kind of Carrie questions being asked by my male friends? You know, I think there's a lot more introspection. And that's one of the things I love about the show the most is that Carrie voice, that Carrie writing voice is the voice that we all feel inside. But now I feel like we feel more at liberty to say it out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the Carrie writing voice that always has the question, you know, that are like the great questions of love and sex. And I'm like, it's crazy how much that's disseminated into, we just did your podcast and you get questions. It was like, you're being Carrie Bradshaw and then we're answering and we're doing like a live podcast column and none of that existed. Instagram questions and followers, like this all happened in a room and all the writers would have to write those down based on what they were hearing at a restaurant from a friend who dated a guy who, you know, she woke up, there was hot sauce in his bed. Cool. Let's write it. And that's part of, so it is just sort of weird finding ourselves in a place where you're like, oh, that's like kind of the conversation's happening in a different place than it was.
Totally. And it feels like, you know, I'm going to say back then, but it wasn't that long ago, but back then it was like, you remember that game, like Operator? Like you whisper something into the next person's ear. Like that's how it felt. Now it's like we all have megaphones and we're allowed to like share experiences out loud with people. And so what's funny is like even the concept of ghosting, that's like a huge thing on my podcast that people ask about, like ghosting. Sex and the City was all about, there's a lot of ghosting. It wasn't called ghosting there.
Right, yeah.
I mean, breaking up on a Post-it. Like these are ghosting things. We didn't have a name for it then, but so many people have gone through those experiences, but they weren't able to share them with a larger group of people than just their friends. And now with social media and Instagram and TikTok and however you get your podcasts or whatever, I feel like we're able to kind of bounce our stories across other people. And that leads to a sense of like normalcy. And New York actually seems like less messed up, because I feel like we were carrying around all these experiences with ourselves and we were thinking that we were unique in those experiences. And now we can be like, yeah, those experiences were significant, but they weren't necessarily special.
Yeah.
Which one of the 4 main girls would have been best at Instagram? And is there a clear winner? Is there one that's in last place?
I definitely feel like, you know what? I feel like Miranda wouldn't have been bothered. Charlotte probably would have done well to sell things because she's got a very like...
She seems like Pinterest almost.
Yes. She's got a fan base. It's mostly like Charleston. You know?
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh my
like
gosh.
she's one of like, I know a lot of like Instagrammers that are like based in like the South and it's all like them posing next to like, you know, lilac bushes and they're wearing like perfect things and they move that money. They move that money. Carrie probably would have been the most interesting because of her look, but also she does the main thing of Instagram, which engagement is rooted in, and they always tell you this when you do social media, ask a question at the end of your post to get people to comment. So Carrie is asking those open-ended questions for people to comment, but unfortunately when the show aired we could just comment in our head versus in a comment section. So Carrie would actually probably be the most successful, but Samantha would definitely be the most fun because you'd be on her close friends story and you know it'd be just absolute debauchery. Yes, and you know she'd like show you her vagina like twice a week. You know?
We'd get in trouble for, did you just fucking like Samantha's
exactly
picture? I'm like, she's an interesting person to follow.
Yeah, exactly.
So
She's a loyal friend.
Carrie would be great for engagement though.
Yeah.
Well, we're watching season 2, episode 5.
4 women and a funeral.
4 women and a funeral. Let's watch this episode and we'll come back.
If
we'll
you
chat
haven't
about it.
If you haven't watched it, if you're not going to watch it,
Pause
Katie will tell you what it's about.
That's right.
Pause the pod or listen to the pod.
Yeah.
Or pause it and go watch it. Either way.
Whatever you want to do.
We'll come back in a
There's
second.
no
Or
judgment.
subscribe to the pod and rate it 5 stars on iTunes.
Subscribe.
And never listen to another episode.
And
Whatever you
never
want to
listen
do.
to
Yeah,
another
just you
episode.
can turn it off after you do that. Do it to Chinae's too. Go to press send, rate that 5 stars, and then whatever.
Then go to the Apple Store and do the same with all the phones, and then we're good.
Yeah, there you
That was
go.
the Kevin Doyle method.
I did that. That's when I first started.
Kevin,
Dude, next time someone's like, I should start a podcast. Is it easy to get the word out there? I'm like, no, you just have to go into the Apple Store, rate it 5 stars, and do hilariously embarrassing things to get the word out.
Yeah. The funny thing is, we actually only have 3 real ratings. The rest of them are just Kevin.
Kevin of the Apple
What
Store.
happened? We got up to 100 that way, and then they deleted all of them by the time we got to, because like they disappear after a while. Once Apple's like, we can tell what you're doing.
We know exactly.
But all right, thank you.
We're going to go watch it. Bye.
Bye.
Episode 17 4 Women and a Funeral. Carrie starts seeing Mr. Big again. Miranda buys her own apartment on the Upper West Side, and Charlotte meets a recent widower at a cemetery. Samantha's actions with a married man get her into trouble with the New York high society ladies who lunch, and only a Titanic-sized star can help her out. And now, back to the boys.
Welcome back, everyone.
It's a good one.
That was a great one. 4 women and a funeral. Have all right. Top question. Has anyone in here ever picked someone up at a funeral? Because it happens in shows. It happened in old school.
I have a really embarrassing story that I'm about to tell you.
Yes.
Oh, great.
Wow, I really actually did not prep this story for now, but I'm really happy it just came right into the brain right when you need it. So I've only been to like 3 funerals in my life. It's my first one ever. I was probably like 12. It was my great-grandfather's funeral.
Okay.
And I kissed innocently a British boy that was at the funeral, and then it turned out to be a relative.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
So that's
That's
my
a
funeral
great
story.
story.
Invite me to your funerals, people.
Wow, we got a
Great
regular.
story.
You're invited to my funeral.
I'm such a funeral slut. It's amazing. But like, he was British, so you kind of like get it.
Mm-hmm.
You get why
Yeah,
I would
you
do
get
it.
Totally.
He just walked up to you and was like, kind of sad in it. And you're like, hello.
Oh, goodness.
A bit tragic what just happened. Huh?
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, this is, you got to respect this dude's game for sure.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
He's Chaz from old school. I'm sure we talked about that.
Yeah.
Mom Meatloaf.
I will say another thing about since we're talking about like, I mean, obviously funerals, graveyards, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Another story for you. I wanted to connect with my grandmother. She just turned 99.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 summers ago, pre-COVID, I was like, I really want to get to know my grandmother as a person before she passes. And I was like, I really like want to know her as like a woman, not as like my grandma, whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to spend a day with her and just ask her about her life. Like ask her about her family, ask her about her like dating life, things that you don't ask your grandma about.
Right.
So at one point, it was such a great day. She like told me all about like who she was as a person. It was so great. And she was like, and we were driving the whole time. And she was like, I got one more stop for us. So we pulled up to a cemetery, and I was like, I had known that she had asked for her birthday for my mom and her siblings to buy my grandmother's cemetery plot and headstone, which is very fucking morbid. And because my grandmother wanted to see it before she died, which so many levels to that
so
is so
interesting.
strange.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see this headstone. I think she wants to show me her plot.
Yeah.
So we hobble, she grabs my arm and we hobble through this cemetery, very uneven ground. And and I think we're about to have a really special moment.
Mm-hmm.
And we stop in front of this grave that says Louis something. And I said, my grandma's like, we're here. And I said, who is this? Whose grave is this? And she said, this is a hot Italian guy that I used to date. I used to go down to the motel and we used to get frisky.
What?
And I just come and see his grave sometimes.
Oh.
And I was like, holy shit. This is not what I was expecting, but I am so glad this happened exactly this way. So Louis,
The
my
hot
grandmother
Italian, get
will
frisky.
not let it go. Talk about stage 5 clinger.
Is amazing. That just gave me
incredible.
chills.
Yeah.
That is
Dude.
like
That's so funny.
That's
he
that's
must
amazing.
have rocked her world.
Oh, hot Italian. She said hot Italian.
hot Italian guy.
Well, that's probably back when like being with an Italian boy was bad.
Yeah.
And my grandmother was divorced, which is a big no-no in her time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so she would go down. She said she would have someone watch the kids, and she would go down to the motel with Louis.
Wait, Louis Kimmy is like not. It wasn't like
An
a guy in
ancillary
high
Italian
school.
guy.
This
He's
is just
just a hot
like
Italian.
after. Wow.
Oh yeah, she was with children at this point.
Wow.
Yeah.
She was a total Samantha.
Yeah, I know. And then she was a little Charlotte, and she,
Yeah.
saw the cemetery as
Look
a breeding
at
ground.
Have a little taste of my meatables.
Oh
you
my
took that
God.
one to the next level.
You really did.
That is
Marilyn doesn't listen to podcasts, but she would laugh.
okay. Good.
She
That's
like
good
you?
to know.
Yeah.
Man, I love Marilyn.
Yeah, Marilyn
That's
Burris.
awesome.
Woo.
That's great.
Fantastic story. Yeah. So the episode, the main kind of things that happen. Charlotte obviously meets a guy at a funeral, and realizes at the end that he's running the racket. He's using grief as the ultimate aphrodisiac. Miranda faces death when she buys an apartment, and the neighbor, which we need to talk about that neighbor.
Yeah.
Big time, like very awkward. So lacks social cues to
Totally.
welcome to your new apartment. The old land person died and the cat ate its face.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't blame Miranda for that one, but she faces her own death when she buys an apartment and thinks she's going to die alone, has a panic attack, and then lastly, Carrie,
your time's up. You're gonna die
oh no,
if you hear that beeping.
All right.
Carrie resuscitates the relationship with Big.
Yeah.
So where do we want to start?
Also, we should mention the funeral in question because we talked about it before. The funeral in question is a big fashion person's
Yes.
funeral, and Carrie was
Ripping
like,
darts during the funeral,
yeah,
smoking cigs.
yeah, and Carrie's like, you don't want to wear that designer's clothes to the funeral, and then it turns out that everyone is wearing them as a sign of respect, and Carrie doesn't do that. Which that would be interesting to go to a famous person's funeral. Have not been to a lot of funerals, but have y'all ever been to a funeral of someone who's like known?
I was at Tom Petty's and it was awkward because I wasn't invited. No, I'm kidding.
I showed up. I said they wouldn't let me in, and I said I won't back down.
No, I mean, I've only been to family funerals.
I mean, I guess
I
that's a
don't
weird
think-
question. I don't think any
what-
one of us have been to
but,
like famous
what-
funerals.
Like, do you like Carrie's like you need to wear black, whatever.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Like, is that a thing?
It's
I haven't been to a lot of funerals.
I did go to a funeral one time. It was a friend's parent, and I still kind of feel bad about this, but like I've only owned 2 suits in my life. I don't have a lot of reason to wear suits. Never have to dress to go to work.
Yeah.
And
you wear a full on like Mark Twain suit to a funeral.
I did, and a full wig and a mustache. No, I did wear a blue suit to the funeral, and it was not a dark blue suit. And the
Fuck is wrong with you?
the person
That's so
the person whose relative had passed away. When I showed up, I was like, "Hey," and I gave him a hug. He goes, "Wow, you look great, man."
oh,
And
Oh,
no.
my God.
Was he joking or?
He was. It wasn't a like F you, but I think it was definitely kind of a like.
You stand out.
It was like, you look sharp. And it wasn't, it was just like Kevin and I had this conversation this weekend about how you trip through things in your life. And it's like, is that because you're funny or do funny things happen to you? And that was like one of the moments now that I look back that I'm like, hey man, from now on funerals, black suit.
Yeah.
Like just do
black
that.
suit.
Black suit.
But you don't own a black suit, do you?
I own a dark charcoal suit.
He's
Which qualifies.
Qualifies
or
as a
hit up a
black
Zara.
suit.
Okay,
People
good.
don't die that often.
Well,
you know?
that's a good
Hit up
point.
a Zara, and
a
you
good
know what? You know what?
Look
Pro
around to-
tip: return it.
There you go.
Don't get the pants altered. Just return it.
Didn't
Nobody
even-
really cares.
You
I have
know
a
where I
question
like to
for
buy
you
all my
guys.
suits,
Where?
and that's Nordstrom's The Rack.
Oh, wow. Are they a podcast sponsor yet?
Oh
They
my
should be.
gosh.
This has been brought to you
Shay's
by.
bought a suit with me at Nordstrom's The Rack.
Yeah, oh yeah. I saw a woman feel you up at Nordstrom The Rack. And we do call it Nordstrom The Rack.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys.
Mhm.
How long after a significant other dies do you think you can start dating?
Ooh.
Wait, how long? Wait.
You're married.
Yeah.
You're
Oh.
married for 10 years.
Yes.
They die. How soon after?
I don't have an opinion on the amount of time, but I do have an opinion on when that's happened with famous people. Fans are just like, what the fuck? We thought you had true love and now you're dating someone new.
Right. They
'Cause
don't want you to be happy again.
That happened with Patton Oswalt's wife
Yeah.
died tragically.
Yes.
Mhm.
And he met someone new like pretty quickly and people flipped out.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, it seemed soon to me, but I don't No, I didn't think I had an opinion on this, but I know that like I was at one of the first I went to a thing with my grandfather. He like fought in World War II on Iwo Jima, and I went to.
Wait, was his name Louis?
His name was Louis. He was this famous Italian.
My grandma fucked your grandma.
Yes!
We're related. Too bad we kissed at that funeral.
But I was there with like all old people, and they were talking about like who was in their like regiment, who wasn't there anymore. And it was very, at that age, like they would read the newspaper and be like, oh, this person died. So sad. Like you go to funerals all the time.
Yeah.
And there was a few people. I remember I was like 18, I think. And I was so fascinated by this one couple that like remarried like 5 years before. And I was so fascinated with, I was like, what? Like, but you were with this person for 40 years. And they're like, that person wanted me
to be happy.
with some, and it's like, and so I think there's a level of maturity to that's like, of course you want that person to be in love. It's just hard when you're younger, not accustomed to being around death and thinking about the fact that we are all going to die.
Yeah.
Katie and I talk about it, and she's always like,
having said that, 6 months. No,
she's always like, this is her speaking. She's like, if I die, I want you to find someone else. And I say the same thing to her. If I die, John, then I want her to find someone else. But then from my perspective, I'm like, I'll never date it. I'll never be with anyone.
Yeah,
I love you so much.
Yeah.
But
There has to be part of you that's like, knowing like she's up in heaven, she doesn't even smoke on earth, but in heaven she's smoking a cigarette, be like, yeah, fucking right, that person's not good enough. Totally. Yeah, no way, I was way better.
Both of my parents have been like, they've through my life been like, well, if the other one dies, like, sorry, like they're like, I'm done, like I'm not gonna. They had both just been like, yeah, I had my kids, like whatever, I don't really want anyone else. But I have known people who were around our age that unfortunately went through that and had a spouse die. And I think when you have kids involved, like you said, there's the Patton Oswalt thing and there's like judgment, but it's like if you're a young widower with a child, like there's a thing where you're like, you kind of want someone around to raise a kid, not only like for help, but also because you want that person to grow up with another figure. And like, obviously you can never replace the person who was your spouse and their parent. But I mean, I can't imagine that level of grief and processing when you're trying to like raise a child as a younger person. But I mean, I think 6 months seems fast, but I also think that could happen. I also think a year.
The hardest thing I think to think about is like, once you have kids that are adults, this happens with divorce too, but I feel like once there are kids around that are adults, like folding them into your life too. Yeah.
But oftentimes those kids want that person to remarry because they're like, 100%. Our dad's single. Like we want him to be happy. We want him to find someone else.
Yeah. I think like just the meditation on death in general, it's like, you don't do that until you're older and then it's around and it's like, it is sad. And it's also sad plus a part of life. And so I think that that's like anything, like people die, people get remarried and all that stuff. And it's not as tragic as it is like a difficult part of life to navigate. And then you see people do it.
Chinae, what's the number?
I told Craig 2 years. And if it's a day sooner, I'll haunt your ass.
Now, here's a question. If it's 2 years or later, will you still haunt him? I feel like you got to, right?
I'm going to check in time to time and I'll be doing my own things.
Yeah.
I'll get another person up in heaven.
You'll get a dead,
or wherever I'm going.
A ghost
eternal purgatory. No. 2 years. 2 years. I want you to be miserable for 2 years. And then you can start the dating process. But like, I want you to be really miserable for 2 years.
Okay. Quick morbid experiment. We can each take 15 seconds.
Okay.
What would it be like? Like, what would your process if you had to do that? Like, I'll start because it's a weird question, but I feel like I would probably be really wrecked and then just be like, okay, I would convince myself, I'd be like, never again. I'm just going to be like a weird single solitary. Not that single people are weird, but I'd be like weird single solitary. I'm going to move to an island. Like I'm going to completely change everything and be stoic. And then I probably would like find somebody a couple of years later.
Yeah.
That's what I imagine it would happen.
I would move to what I imagine is Taos. Start wearing really big jewelry, flowy clothing.
A lot of turquoise.
I would go full art teacher,
Nice.
like Southwest
lot
art
of
teacher
bangles.
vibes. And then like meet a life partner, never get married, but like a life partner. And we like have a ceramic studio together and stuff.
Mhm.
But like we don't live on the same property, but we
Nice.
are together
God,
for
that's-
years.
Maybe we're gonna end
You
up
always
together.
have the
probably.
best, always the best answers.
You really do.
I would just be horseshit. Like I can't imagine. I'm already like the most awkward dater that I know, and I can't imagine like getting back into that world. It would just be so painful. Like the first date would be, I'd probably go on a date and just fumble and then just
Like, uh-huh.
be like, I don't want to do this.
I do.
I'm gonna
I,
play World of Warcraft instead.
Just lean in.
Yeah, okay.
I do think it'd be fun to have like that second shot at like having like 80. You're 85 and you meet like another 85-year-old and you're just like having like old people, like new, nasty, weird old people sex where it's just like,
No one cares.
because it's like I worked at a nursing home for a while. There's like big STD breakouts in nursing homes because they fucking. And
Dude, you look like a guy that's down for old people sex.
yeah. And there's people in the Alzheimer's wing.
I never knew that about you until right now. I'm
Well-
just looking at you.
And you were like, you've got it written all over your face.
I like the
Geriatric
idea.
fucking.
I like knowing my parents are having sex. I like
your,
knowing
your
old people are.
lips kind of curl up when you're talking about it.
Yeah.
Mustache just on the corners. It upturns.
Love
Yeah,
this.
and so listen, I already have you guys. Someone had their gravestone picked out. I have my nursing home picked out, and
He's scoping it for hotties.
I'm looking
Yes.
for a wife who's gonna die early so I can get back in that game.
Dude, what's your game gonna be? What's your like nursing home dating thing gonna
It's
be?
definitely someone with dentures. Be like, take them out. Let's
Oh,
start there.
God, you have thought about this.
No, I'm totally kidding. I do think watching like old people romance is beautiful. That it's like when there's someone with a second shot that's like, I just wanted someone to travel with. And I think that
Right.
actually, you can probably learn something from that for what you're looking for now to be like, Corey's mentioned this, like what, someone to churn butter with, or what is it?
Oh, you always say churn butter. I read this book by a guy named Robert Johnson. It's
Stir
called
oatmeal.
It's Stir the Oatmeal. It's called We. It's a fantastic relationship book. It's about the psychology of modern Western romantic love and where it came from, and fairy tale culture and how that's like permeated itself into Western culture. The guy studied with Carl Jung's wife, who like took over Carl Jung's practice afterward. But anyway, his thing is he basically is like, instead of looking for someone to fulfill all your romantic fantasies, you need to look for someone to, what he says, stir the oatmeal, which is like the daily tasks of life.
Mhm.
Where you're just like share a house together, raise kids, like do taxes, but also enjoy life
Have
together.
sex at the nursing home.
Have sex with the nursing
Take
home.
In my
Adventures.
head, I'm literally like, just like, people don't just microwave oatmeal. I mean, I'm like, I know that's not the point, but I'm stuck on that.
No, I like
but
it.
But I really do feel like actually like that second marriage love, Kevin, I like that you were saying like we should actually look at that, because I think that's so right. It's like
Yeah.
when you strip everything away, what actually matters is like being friends with a person
Yeah.
and like cultivating a really good friendship with someone. And it's, the looks fade, the like, I mean, according to you, the sexuality doesn't fade. You sicko. Better than
No, it
ever. No
doesn't.
dentures.
Doesn't fade.
But all that strips away and you're like, oh, I want someone to spend my time with.
Yeah, that's what it is.
beautiful
Yeah, I just
thing.
want companionship.
Show me your ass.
I one time
touch my balls
Oh.
now. Oh, hold on.
I one time drank denture water. Would not recommend.
How did you drink denture water?
That's
Again, Marilyn's
disgusting.
getting another spotlight on the pod. This is really her podcast now.
Ah,
But
love
she
her.
put her teeth in the water and set it by the sink every night. Or I'm sure it's like some other denture
Yeah,
solution.
yeah.
And I got up in the night and thought it was just a glass of water. And I drank
Oh
her
my
denture
gosh.
water.
What's kind of crazy is that we all know this because me and Kevin and John just spent a weekend in Atlantic City together, but I have this like crazy mouth guard because I grind my teeth really hard at night. And
Dude, it shocked me when you first
In
started
the morning,
talking.
Corey's like, hi guys, I'm excited to gamble today.
it is
It's a pretty exciting day here in Atlantic City.
it's the most intense mouth guard ever.
You guys want to play clap or blackjack? I'm like, what? Who?
what do you? Hold on, I'm sorry.
It's also like, tell me you have anxiety without telling me you have anxiety.
It's
Your
exactly
mouth guard
that.
says it all.
But if you go into my bathroom every day, there's a glass of blue water with my mouth guard, and it's what my dentures will look like in a few years.
You're just
when I get
preparing
dentures.
whoever your future spouse will be.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Oh my gosh.
Your
I have
dentist.
so many old man
They're
things
like,
about me.
what happened? Your
That-
dentist's like, you destroyed your molars because you didn't communicate about what you were feeling for the past 10 years.
Exactly.
So that brings up a good segue
Yeah.
into when we last recorded this. Both you, Kevin, and Cory had roommates, and now you guys are single. And
Yeah.
have you ever, or not single, but living by yourselves?
Yeah.
Have you faced a similar mental quandary as Miranda with
Yes.
Wow.
down alone? in your
Choking
apartment?
on Chinese.
Corey has the one of the funniest things that
We
I've
already talked
ever.
about his dentures.
And his stupid mouth guard.
Corey said in a moment of not trying to be funny. I think you were kind of funny about it afterwards, but you were was one of the most naturally funny things that I've ever heard. Which is when you were decorating your place.
Wait,
when we were
what?
at peak pandemic, and I mean, think about a funeral. That's what you remember your quote.
No, you tell me.
Corey was like, we were all on Zoom, like not communicating with each other. And Corey's like, I'm getting like housework done. He's like, sometimes I'm in my apartment alone decorating, and it's just like, am I just decorating and cleaning up my own tomb?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like,
I said, I feel like I'm building a tomb for myself.
it was like the most
Because
that could be in
Yeah,
that
something
show.
Marilyn can relate.
I hired for a brief time. I hired a friend of a friend, our friend Melina Kempf. She does like styling for people, and she has a friend that's a decorator. I hired them over Zoom, went through my apartment, tried to decorate in the pandemic, and I was like, I am an adult. I have a job. And there were so many times that I would sit there alone at night watching a movie with a glass of wine being like, I am making a very beautiful, for my taste, place to die in by myself. And
No.
that's all it is. But
well lit tomb. We
well,
gotta
too.
say.
But the other time is that about a year ago, pre-pandemic, I got food poisoning one night, and I always, when I was a kid, I had stomach surgery when I was a little kid, and I was told, I stand by this, I was told that I had my appendix cut out. So I lived my entire life being like, I don't have an appendix. And then like a year and a half ago, my mom was like, you have an appendix? I was like, what? And she was like, you didn't get your appendix taken out. You had this other intestinal surgery. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, yeah, they didn't. I was like,
Have you gone back, or do you still just tell people you don't have appendix?
No, because then I like told a doctor one time. I was like, I told a doctor who I like went to. I was like, by the way, I told you at this point, I don't have an appendix. Apparently, I do. And he was like, okay, we'll put that on your chart.
He's like, this is America. We don't give a shit. But you should change your Hinge profile. It's not the most interesting thing about you anymore.
It'd be like two truths and a lie. Don't have an appendix.
This story is the opposite of you wearing a light blue suit to a funeral. This is actually just funny shit that happens to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
But so because of that, I got I got food poisoning one night, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
And I was lying on the floor in my bathroom, and I could feel it working its way through my body. And it was really the point where I, aside from building my own tomb, I was like, I live by myself. My neighbors are gone. I think it was before COVID, but like the building was like pretty empty. And I was like, what if I'm going to die? And I texted our friend who she has a doctorate of nursing. And I texted her and her husband, and I was like, here's the thing. I didn't think I had an appendix, but I do. Am I having appendicitis, and did my appendix explode? And she went through, he like woke his wife up.
Wow.
And she went through the symptoms, and she was like, what are you feeling? What's happening? And then she was like, okay, you're feeling this one thing. That means it's food poisoning. But she was like, honestly, if you didn't answer this question, I would tell you, get up and go to the emergency room
Oh my
right now.
gosh.
So that was like the one time that recently I thought that was going to happen.
I mean, that is interesting you say that, because that is like a reality of life and relationship, that like in the beginning you're just like, I want someone who's like more fun and is a little prettier or something, and then it's like you go a little more through life and you're like, I want someone that like if I'm sick and gonna die will help me, you know what I mean, or like
Totally.
things that are like a little more important than like, I don't know, her toe is weird. Like
Exactly.
all the George Costanza things that are just like, she talks too close to me.
Yeah, totally.
I don't think I'll be able to do roommates again, but living by myself, I was like, oh, if I live with someone again, I want it to be someone who I like love and am intimate with, you know? So whether
Yeah.
that is like a partner or just a roommate that I'm like, rent's $1,100 a month, and sometimes we have to have sex. All right, if you're not into it.
As long as you take out your dentures.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm actually looking for something different. I'm like, that's fine. But it has like made me, like it's nice to be alone, and it's nice to be single and like be able to do whatever you want with your time. And then also you're like, oh wait, it's nice and peaceful. And then you're like, I think it's a good thing. If you can live alone, I think it's a good thing to do, to experience it for a time, and it'll kind of show you like what you want out of different things. But
and also it is totally normal to wonder how long before someone would find you if you died. I would always think about that.
I've never thought about that.
I've thought about it so many times. When I first moved in by myself, I was like, how many days on average do you think people would text you? Because people text you and then you don't text them back, but that's like kind of normal.
Yeah.
So it's like at what period? And I landed on about 2 weeks.
No.
Yes.
there's no way.
If you didn't live with,
there's no
if
way.
I didn't live with my boyfriend. Okay, if Craig was
Craig's
living with me and he didn't notice I was dead for 2 weeks, we would have a larger issue that we should talk
taking
about.
a lot of naps.
She shit herself 2 weeks ago and she's just laying in it. No, literally, I think it's 2 weeks.
You're
Why
so
do you
off. There's
think-
no way it's more than 2 days.
What?
There's
I
no
don't
way.
respond
Who do you
to
talk
text for
to?
2 weeks.
But I feel like
I do talk to. I'm making myself sound really sad.
I know.
I mean, Instagram alone, people. I leave for 6 hours and people are like, "Are you okay?"
Exactly.
I'm like,
That would be a thing that tip people off. They'd be like, she's not posting.
yeah.
I'll say this.
I know 2 week people, and you're not a 2 week person.
I could actually name a few 2 week people. But that happened in my neighborhood. A guy, they didn't find him for 3 days in my old neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay, 3 days is like. I mean, that's pretty good. Honestly, I'm like, pretty good.
3 days. You got some people in your
I
life.
mean, you start to stink at 3 days.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's gonna find him.
Yeah.
This is a very morbid conversation.
Yeah.
It is, but
Morbid
it's an episode. It's a
Miranda
funeral
went through.
episode.
These are
It is a morbid
These are
episode.
what New Yorkers are thinking. Something else that I've always thought about as a New Yorker is like every building and apartment any of us have ever lived in have probably had multiple people die in.
100%.
You know, you're like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to live in there. People have died. Like maybe someone's died in there. It's like, oh, every place in New York.
Living in New York and thinking about that should clear up whether ghosts exist.
It happened it happens all the time. I mean, it happened when I think about it, like I can count. I mean, it's happened in every building we've lived in. I know for a fact 2 buildings that I've lived in recently, it's happened in.
Did they die in the apartment?
Yeah. My old building, I lived, there was a very old landlord that I was very close to. And I went away for vacation and it happened then. And then in my current building, there was a very old woman that lived upstairs.
Okay, I have a question for you
Lived in a
guys.
shoe.
Would
She
you
lived in a
care? Would you care more if someone was murdered in that apartment?
Yes. 1,000%.
Okay, I was just checking if everyone's okay in the building. I mean, I kind of would be like really excited about a ghost. Our apartment's definitely haunted.
Yeah, our apartments, I feel like.
I feel like
ghosts.
ghost energy comes out when there aren't people around. Like I love living in New York because you can sense. It's the same reason why you hate it sometimes, but it's like you sense people. Like I live on a very quiet block,
Right.
But it's like you can feel that there are people around. Whenever I'm like, it's actually probably way more dangerous to live in a city than it is like by yourself out in the woods. But being out in the woods is way scarier.
Oh,
There's way more-
nothing is scarier than a suburb.
I worked at a summer camp one time. I worked at a summer camp one time, and everyone went away. Like it was like after the summer camp thing, and they were like, "We need someone to like take care of it." And I took care of like a 200-acre camp for a weekend by myself one time.
Terrifying.
Was it so scary?
It was scary. I had to like basically put up blocks in my head to be like, "This is okay." It was me and Jesse the dog that we. It was just us.
Gosh.
Yeah, it was just us. It was weird.
I want to go through these poll questions.
Yeah.
Because I think they're pretty fascinating. Shouts out to Peyton, who helps us with our Instagram.
Amazing.
And then you guys can guess, and then I'll tell you what the polls are. Okay. This is what we have first. In your opinion, did Samantha do anything wrong in this situation? Yes, kissed a married man. No, he kissed her.
I totally forgot to summarize that, by the way.
Go ahead and summarize.
Yeah. So Samantha hooks up with a married guy and gets basically blackballed from all.
Because his wife walks in.
His wife walks in,
and blackballs her from all the New York social scene. So kills her social life.
Yeah.
Did she do something wrong is the question?
No.
Yes, she kissed a married man. No, he kissed her.
No, he kissed her, and he's the one that bears the responsibility. He's the married one.
I agree with Chinae. He kissed her. She didn't do anything wrong.
If someone's leaning in, question for y'all, if you're with a married person and they lean in to kiss you and you see it happening, what do?
You don't like say welcome to being a woman.
Yeah, sure.
Like, all
yeah,
the time.
I imagine.
You just like you quickly like bop the pelvis forward and you pelvis forward, head back, and you're out of there.
Yeah.
Like you're on a lazy boy recliner.
Exactly. You're down. And you're down.
You pull the
and
handle.
you know you got to do that core strength, but you're down.
All right, we're going into a Russian twist right now.
Oh man, we have 28% said yes, kissed married man. That's over 300 people, and then 72% no, he kissed her. So
Yeah.
most people agree.
Right.
Poll: dinner with an ex, yes or no?
That
We've all done it.
I'm going
let's
to
be
say
honest.
yes.
As long as you're not with someone.
I think
Yeah,
if you're single, if you're both single,
I think if you're both single, yes. I
Yeah.
think
But-
you're consenting adults.
I know this is not a poll. This is a qualification, but you have to know that you are opening a door.
Mhm.
You can't
Yeah.
be mad when you open the door.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Mhm.
That's what we have. We have yes 40%, no 60%. But it's like with that caveat, I think it goes to yes because it's like people are saying like, no, you don't do it because you're not
Yeah.
just having
Yeah.
dinner.
Right.
You know like
No one answers like, how are you? And it's not, they don't give a shit how you actually are.
No,
Yeah.
you
They
want to
wanna
know what
fuck.
they know what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will bring up, I know for a fact you've had dinner with your ex before and you were not opening the door.
yes, we had a very clear delineation. And even when we broke up, I had in mind. And like, listen, there was one time we were at a party, we were both drinking. It was like towards the end of the night, and like an Uber showed up, and she was like, "I'm gonna get in the car," and I was like, "I'm not." And in my head, I'm like, do I want to have sex right now?" Yes.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like
With the driver?
with the drive with Raul.
With Raul.
But it's like the caveat, the traditional wisdom is like
Mhm.
no and yes and all these things. And then there are people that are like, you know, it's a little delineation from the norm that took some construction to
Mhm.
create like a friendship again
Yeah.
that was not and that's like one of the reasons why I like online dating. Like sometimes you meet people where it's like not a match, but like I would have never met you otherwise, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do agree with you. It's no but. And there was
It's an opening.
it's an
Mhm.
opening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a few more polls. And
Getting
then
back with an ex, yes or no?
getting back with an ex, yes or no?
Just getting back together with an ex, yes or no?
I would say that it.
Of course it needs a caveat, but
Mhm.
we can add the caveat after the yes or no, I say.
Oh man, that's tough.
No.
I say no.
I'd say no.
Yeah. Has it ever worked? What like
Very rarely.
Yeah.
And it would be a massive amount of work.
Mhm.
It would have to be like the most two like mature people who've
Mhm.
actually done work on themselves.
Mm.
Or it was like, I had to move to like Pensacola for a job and I'm
Mhm.
back.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
if you had issues, like it's 99% of the time who that person is.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
and you don't even like who they were. You probably don't like who they
Yeah,
are.
people don't change.
No, they really don't. Not
Yeah.
as much as you'd like.
Yeah.
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 And also, you're also buying into the lie that you couldn't find anyone else. And I think that is actually like not really
Mm.
believing in yourself or your trajectory. It's like, I have to revisit what's behind me because I don't believe in what's in front of me.
Wow. That is like
Did you
put
make
that
that
on a
up just now?
put that
I
on
did,
a
but I
t-shirt.
feel like actually, like I got goosebumps for myself.
Yeah.
It is beautiful though, because it is like I think everyone has rose-colored glasses. Of course, like 2 weeks after you like break up
Yep.
or something, you're just like, oh my gosh, but this, and you replay all. I mean, that 500 Days of Summer thing where they're thinking back. I love when thinking about the IKEA thing and replaying it, but it's like we do that in so many ways. Like, of course, if you were with a person for a year or something, of course you're gonna have
Mhm.
10, 20,
Tons of
50,
good memories.
100
Yeah,
good
we
memories.
know that was your favorite Bon Me spot. We get it. But
Right.
what I tell people always is when you break up, what you should do, and this is just a little piece of life advice for
Mhm.
anyone listening.
Burn the person's house down.
Yes. after you do that, make sure you write down, if I'm not a journaler, I don't believe in that shit, but get a piece of paper or whatever you have and write down all the things that were really big issues in your relationship.
Yeah.
Write down the reality. You don't have to bash them. You can write down the good shit, but likelihood you'll remember that stuff.
Right.
But write down all the bad stuff, the things that made you want to get out of the relationship,
Yeah.
because that's going to be the truth that you can revisit when you are flirting with loneliness, when you're flirting with all those great things that you remember. You can go back to that list and be like, yeah, I'm not sure that these things, these like huge things, are things that they could have changed at this time.
That's really great advice.
That's
Yeah,
really
and
great
you
advice.
actually can. It's like how you would ask a friend like for some perspective, but it's actually yourself because you're really the only person that can give you that perspective.
You have to select like there's a scale. The more lonely you are, the more selective your memory will become.
Wow.
So it's
Yeah.
good to have like
Yeah.
frame
Another tea.
Yeah.
Another
Put
tea.
it right above your bracers. Do you bracer water in your bathroom or your what do you have, retainer?
Retainer
water.
Oh yeah.
Mouth guard water.
Yeah, mouth guard water. Yeah.
Every night, take your mouth guard out and read that.
Exactly. Totally.
All right, one more real quick, then we're done. Okay. This is a quote. They are threatened. Buying a place alone means you don't need a man. Everyone needs a man. That's why I rent. If you own and he rents, the power structure is all off.
That's what Charlotte said in the episode,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Charlotte said that because she was going to keep renting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just there's lots of people that said yes. Well, there's that storyline doesn't age well. Women don't settle for insecure men anymore.
Wish that was true.
Yeah, 77% say yes, 23% say no. A lot of people say the storyline's antiquated, but I think it's I think especially like you're living in a dream world if that's not still a conversation.
I mean,
especially worldwide. Like maybe in New York where you know or different cities and stuff.
Yeah,
but
especially there's like real estate lawyers that were doing transactions when Sex and the City were around are still the same people doing them now. So they're still gonna ask the same shitty questions.
Yeah, it's true.
And I also think the thing you said earlier about where you were like Miranda is like she's like an aspirational archetype. I think that is true. And I also think that we have grown in a place in like the national or societal conversation or whatever, where people can like say that. I still think the practice of how we live doesn't always match up to like people can say like, yeah, we don't settle for men like that anymore. And it's like, but look at the practice
Look
of
at
your
my
life.
DMs.
And for men and women.
Right.
It's not just on women, it's men
No,
and
it's-
women. It's like men, check your own behavior.
At our core, like we want to believe the best in people. And
Yes.
that is a good quality. Unfortunately, that good quality gets spread very liberally over people in general.
Mhm.
I will say, so I used to live in a studio apartment in the building that I live in now. I'm not giving my address out, you creeps. But I was like, I need a bigger apartment. I needed 1 bedroom. So I remember emailing my landlord and I said, I'm looking for a 1 bedroom. I would love to move in the building because that would be insanely convenient. And I loved the apartment. I love the neighborhood. And she said, well, we only have 2 bedrooms. And I was like, well, and I almost didn't even ask the next question because of that mindset of like, I can't, I shouldn't, what does that look like?
Mhm.
And I was just like, well, what does it cost? Turns out the 2 bedroom was in my budget. And so I was like, I'll take it. But I remember the funny thing is I never had shared the elevator with anyone else in my building.
Yeah.
So I really hadn't gotten to know any of my neighbors because I lived on the first floor and I just came right in my apartment.
Mhm.
And so it was funny when I was moving in from the first floor, people would be like, when did you guys move in?
Yeah.
And it was always this we, not me.
Yeah.
It was always you guys and not you.
Mhm.
And it was always assumed that I had a partner that was moving in with
Right.
me. And I was actually moving into a 2-bedroom apartment by myself.
Mhm.
I mean, my partner lives with me now and we share an apartment and now that is much easier for everyone to digest in my building. But it was this weird explanation that I had to write about actually of like being a single woman and making those kind of decisions for yourself. And I'll say it right here. Like, I think that financial dynamics are a real thing in relationships.
Mhm.
Like, I remember meeting with a financial advisor and she said, one of the hardest things to overcome is when a woman makes more than a man. But that's not to say that we should make less.
Right.
You know, it's like that we have to push a little harder whenever that's the case. And so for me, I can say that, you know, as a person who did a Miranda, I didn't buy a place, but I rented a 2-bedroom apartment in New York City. You know, if anything, I think it made people take me more seriously when I was dating and actually saw that like I had my life set up. And that should be an attractive thing for someone.
Totally.
And if you are looking for someone to build a life with, they should want to aspire to live, you know, up to what your standards are.
Yeah.
You don't have to lower yourself for theirs. Not to end this on like some serious note, but truly, like, if that is something that makes someone feel so insecure that they can't date you, like, they're not someone that you should be with either way.
Totally.
Yeah.
I agree more.
Yeah. No.
Well put.
Very well put. It's interesting that no one on the elevator said, "Do you feel like you're building a tomb for you to die in?"
That's your special spin.
They're like, Cory feels like that.
Chinae, where can everyone find you?
You can follow me at Chinae Alexander on Instagram. That's CHINAE Alexander, the normal way. And don't find me on TikTok. Give me like 6 months. And then you can find me. My podcast is Press M Podcast. Start out with the Bradshaw Boys episode.
It was so fun having you back.
Fun.
You are just the best.
Thank you so much.
We love you so much, and big fan of yours and everything that you do.
Same.
Thank you for joining us. Listeners, please check us out on Patreon. Give our pod also subscribe, write as a review, so Kevin doesn't have to do it anymore.
We're gonna put up a special video and episode on the Patreon that you can go watch. That is us spending $100 at the Sex and the City slot machines. They have Sex and the City themed slot machines, so you can go see how that goes for us. We spent $100, and we won't say what happened, but we have the full 12-minute video of what happened with our $100 at the Sex and the City slot machines. It'll be on the Patreon. So if you want to see that and hear the episode, hear the whole behind the scenes of our Atlantic City trip.
Yep, that's going to go up, and that will be a precursor to the Sex and the City limo video that will come out at some point.
That's right.
That we're gonna
Absolutely.
shoot.
So that'll be on the Patreon. So go sign up.
Later, taters.
Later, taters.
Bye.
The Bradshaw Boys stars Cory Cavin, Jon Sieber, and Kevin James Doyle. The show is produced by Jeremy L. Balon. For more information on the guys, check out their website at bradshawboys.com, on social media at The Bradshaw Boys. And if you see them in the street, tip your glass. Thanks for listening.